Schadenfreude is the joy in the misfortune of others. So when someone you dislike fails, or when the football team you hate loses, you feel a certain pleasure. You feel Schadenfreude. It's a word of German origin. Schaden means harm and Freude means joy. Now it's used widely in English, but this word is rather an exception. Have you ever wondered why there are so few German words in English? Let's look into it. Hello and welcome to Let Them Talk TV. English is a Germanic language. Of the top 100 most commonly used words in English, 96 are Germanic. The exceptions being use, person and people, number, and because, the cause part anyway. And if we look at the core vocabulary, that is the top 1,000 words in the English language, about 50% are Germanic. Tons of French words have entered the English language, and it is estimated that 41% of English words come from French. About 15% of English words come from Latin, and about 33% of English words come from Old English, which is Germanic, but it's not German. By the way, if you want a deep dive into where English words come from and why Wikipedia stats are so wrong, watch this groundbreaking video here. And yet, despite Germany being the most widely spoken first language in Europe with over 100 million native speakers and the largest economy in Europe, there are only a handful of common English words from modern German. Apart from that is quite a few food-related items like muesli and lager and pretzel and hamburger and frankfurter and noodle, sauerkraut, marzipan, pumpernickel. Why has the English language largely ignored its big continental sister? There are a few, very few German words that have entered the English language, and we'll look at those later in the video. We'll also have a look at a few Yiddish words that have entered the language. Yiddish is a language closely related to German. More about that in a moment. First, a look at the history. The English language and the German language share a common ancestor. It's called Proto-Germanic by modern linguists. This is its family tree. German and English are on different branches of the same language group. English grammar is mostly West Germanic, although there could be a little Scandinavian influence from Old Norse. That's the language of the Vikings on the North Germanic branch, and there might be some influence from French grammar, which I discuss in more detail here. If we zoom into the family tree, English is in the Anglo-Frisian branch. English shares this branch of the tree with Frisian and the Scots language. German is in a Germanic subgroup it shares with Yiddish. Until 1066, most English words were Germanic, but then the Normans invaded, and for 350 years, the language of power and authority in England was French, or rather Anglo-Norman French, as it's referred to now. All the laws and proclamations were written either in French or Latin, and of course this gave a huge number of French and Latin words into English. If you look at the English of 1066 and 1400, it's a completely different language. The grammar has changed and lots of new words have entered the language, mostly French. During the Renaissance, a lot of Latin and Greek terms related to science, art, philosophy entered the English language, and during this time, French was the language of prestige and high culture across Europe. So English continued to soak up French words into the language. But at this time, it was the French from Paris rather than Norman French that English borrowed from. In 1700, for example, the population of France was 21 million. England had a population at that time of 5.2 million. And the whole of Russia only had 13 million people. And even in recent times, French words and expressions have continued to pour in. For example, façade, niche, fiancé, diplomacy, superbe, capitalism, entrepreneur, espionage, coup d'etat, ballet, déjà vu, and hundreds more. In 1789, the GDP of France was 3 times greater than Britain. And what about other countries close to Britain? Well, Flanders and Holland were important trading partners with England, especially in the weaving and beer sectors and some other industries, and there were substantial numbers of Flemish immigrants into England and Scotland in the Middle Ages. And that's why there are a lot of common Dutch words in English. Words like cruise, snack, snoop, yacht, geek, dapper, to heckle, trigger, loiter, hoist, wagon, hanker, cookie, and many more. As for Germany, remember that Germany as a single entity did not exist until 1871. Before then, what we now call Germany was a collection of separate kingdoms, duchies, principalities, free cities, and church territories, some of which formed part of the Holy Roman Empire. The Kingdom of Prussia was formed in 1701, and it had a population of around 2 million. So the combined German-speaking economies and populations were considerably smaller than France, and German-speaking countries were that much further away than France and the Netherlands, so there was less trade. French, rather than German, was the language of diplomacy, the language of food, fashion, and philosophy. I mean, we say vegetables and not Gemüse. We say beef, not Rindfleisch. We say British Constitution and not British Verfassung. We say consciousness and not Bewusstsein. Latin too was used widely in Europe in many fields, including science, well into the 18th century. So German was not a language of prestige. It may have been important in Central Europe, but it was far less so in England. Even today, while German is the most widely spoken first language in Europe, if we look at what languages pupils in Britain in schools take for their GCSEs, that is the exams that they take at 16, in 2024, French was first with 129,000, then Spanish closely behind with 127,000, and in third place, German, but much lower at 34,700. But German did have, and continues to have, some influence, but in more niche areas. So now, let's look at some relatively common words English has borrowed from German. And I'll give you an example of usage for each one. Note that I'll be using English pronunciation, not German. Well, I couldn't use German pronunciation if I wanted to. And the English meaning may differ slightly from the German. So first of all, we have Zeitgeist, and this means the spirit of the times. And it literally means in German, time ghost. So for example, wow, that movie about the pop group living in swinging London really captured the zeitgeist of the 1960s. Hinterland, and this means a very remote area, far away from the cities and the coast. And in German, it literally means the land behind. The villagers living in the rural hinterland were completely unaware of the technological advances that were taking place in the cities. Blitz. Now, this is an intensive attack on something, and in German, blitz means lightning. We need to sell more of our scam products. Let's blitz our customers with millions of spam emails. Great. Ersatz. Once again, I remind you, I'm pronouncing this the English way, and ersatz means an inferior substitute for something. The German word means replacement. So, for example, during the Second World War, people couldn't get real coffee, so they made an ersatz coffee made of chicory or barley or something. And in English, ersatz always has a negative meaning, and I don't speak German, but from my reading, that's not always the case in German. Angst. Now, that is a feeling of anxiety and insecurity and a general worry about, I don't know, the human condition. Almost everybody watching would have gone through some kind of teenage angst. Well, everybody over the age of 12, that is. Doppelganger. And that is a lookalike. In German, it means a double walker. No, I didn't rob the jewelry store. It was just someone who looks completely like me. A doppelganger. I'm innocent, honest, Gov. Wunderkind. An extremely gifted young person. It literally means a wonder child. At the age of 12, she received a PhD in mathematics. Now the Wunderkind is working on an organic farm. Wanderlust. Desire for wandering in German. After 5 years working at the factory in that small town, I got wanderlust and bought a one-way ticket to Argentina. There are some more obscure scientific, mathematic and sociological words, and then there are some words from the Second World War and some more food items. But in terms of common words that most educated people would know and use in everyday conversations, those are the only ones I could think of. I'll give an honorary mention to some Yiddish words. As I said, Yiddish is a language closely related to German, which kind of justifies its inclusion here. Most of the Yiddish words entered English from East European Jewish immigrants to the US, though not entirely. And here are a few common English words that we get from Yiddish. The first one is nosh, which means a snack or a nibble. Maybe you're noshing on something while watching this video. Spiel, which is a long-winded sales pitch. Oh, he gave me a whole spiel about how his product would save me time and money, but I didn't buy it. To schmooze, which means to impress someone with conversation and gain their favour. It comes from the Yiddish schmözen, meaning to chat. I didn't have an invitation to the party, but I managed to schmooze my way in. Stumm means to be quiet. You might hear the expression keep stumm, which is a more polite way of saying shut up. Only you know about my criminal past, and I expect you to keep stumm about it. Okay. Glitch. If your phone or computer suddenly stops working properly, you can call it a glitch, and it comes from Yiddish glitch, meaning slide. Gesump, which is a term that comes in through Yiddish in Britain rather than the US, and it means offering to pay more than what's already been accepted. I'll give you an example. It's often used in buying houses, I think almost exclusively, I think. So, for example, we found our dream home and then we were gesumpt. So we have to start looking all over again. And the Yiddish term means to overcharge. And if you're interested in the history of the English language, then do sign up to my newsletter, The Rambler, link in the description. It's free. Or support the channel and get exclusive content by becoming a patron. It's wunderbar. That's all for now. Auf Wiedersehen.